Welcome back to the shop, and today we're going to be doing a paint job. This is an order from one of my viewers here on YouTube. He reached out and he wanted a Bespin DL-44, and he didn't really specify, but I decided to make him the Luke version. The reason why I picked the Luke version is the Luke version is a little more weathered and beat up than the Han version, so it gives us a lot more things to do and a lot more fun to paint it. Now this blaster is going to be getting the screen accurate paint job, or the Hero screen accurate paint job, meaning this is going to be painted and weathered to match Luke's blank firing, real Mauser, real scope, everything blaster. Now I do charge extra for this paint job, and the reason why, it takes about 2 days to do it, and everything is painted individually and then assembled. For example, this is the Han Solo DL-44 Hero from A New Hope. Now, this does not have the screen accurate paint job or the Hero accurate paint job, but what it does have is my standard paint job, which is I paint the whole thing after it's assembled, and then dry brush silver and dry brush brass parts. For example, this adjuster and this ring and everything, that all gets dry brush brass. And then finally the grips get painted. Now, to say this is not a screen accurate paint job, it actually 100% is a screen accurate paint job, but it's not a Hero. The reason why this paint job is a little bit different than a Hero is most of the Heroes aren't painted. Well, parts of them may be painted, but the actual rental firearm used as the master or as the Hero blaster, the blank firing, they're not painted. They don't paint these. They come in the condition that they come in. Luke's has a worn off finish and it's showing a lot of age and patina, and that is really fun to replicate. Han's version of the ESB Bespin is probably a much better taken care of or recently restored Mauser. It doesn't have a lot of this patina and wear, showing a longer life. But as far as the standard paint job, this is how the props would have been weathered if they weren't the Heroes. For example, if this was a stunt DL-44, this would have been exactly how it was weathered. It would have been assembled, painted, and then dry brushed. And that's how they did it in the movies. Every blaster that's not a real original firearm, from your E11s all the way down to your DH17s to your DL18s, all your blasters, especially DL21s from Empire Strikes Back, they're all fiberglass. None of them are real firearms, so they have this paint job and then a dry brushing to weather them. So this is still a screen accurate paint job, it's just not the Hero paint job. And today what we're going to do is the Hero paint job, and to start with that we need to paint the scope mount, the scope nut, and the scope. And the reason why we're painting these parts is because we're going to be doing what's called chip away paint job. We're actually going to be painting these parts, and then we're actually going to be adding a masking that will be removed later on to give it more depth and more realistic wear. These parts also, especially the scope, it will also get a pass with the dry brushing, but that will come at the end of the paint job. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and paint this guy, and I'm just going to paint him right here on the table because it's got a cover on it, and that's, if you look at it, that's what we do with it. So let's get started. What we're using here is Rust-Oleum's metallic finish gold, and the reason why I like this stuff is, one, it's fairly durable, and two, it dries fairly quickly. This will be dry in about 15-20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and get to painting. There, that's done. Now, on this, I want to make sure I get these feet down here on the bottom really good, and this ring area really good. Those are the main places. There's some few scratches on top I need to simulate also. So if I was doing this maybe on Hans, I would not have painted this much. I would have painted just the feet and the back half. But since this is Luke's and it's a little more beat up, I'm giving it a full paint job. Now this will get a full paint coverage. So like I said, this is the Rust-Oleum metallic finish gold. This works really well. For aluminum, I like to use Rust-Oleum ×2 metallic silver. This really simulates aluminum and clean steel really well. And this is what I base all my helmets in and everything that I'm going to weather with chip away style paint job. This is my go-to because it weathers fast. I've never had it react to anything. It just works really good. All right, now that's painted. All right, there we go. We're gonna let these pieces dry, and while they dry, I'll talk about one other part that we have, and that's the flash suppressor. It's not over here right now because the paint that I use on the flash suppressor takes forever to dry. So it's already been painted in advance. And I used also the metallic finish, Rust-Oleum metallic finish, but I used the chrome finish. And the thing about the chrome finish is it takes forever to dry. And if you don't give it enough time, it's going to fingerprint like nobody's business. Strangely enough, the brass or the gold and the copper, which also use copper for other types of paint jobs and weathering, the copper, it also dries just as fast as the gold does, but the chrome takes a long time. Once everything's assembled, I am going to be using this SprayMax 3680-102 semi-gloss black. This is, for the money, the best paint I can find for doing these types of paint jobs. This is a professional paint. You'll find this in body shops. We actually used to carry this at my work. The reason why I use it is it dries fast, it covers good, and it also is a lot less expensive than your traditional automotive grade or professional grade spray paints. I used to use a Rust-Oleum semi-gloss black that they just stopped making. I don't know why they stopped making it, but we've been looking for it forever. It was the best paint, but they stopped making it, and I've really been bummed. I must have been the only one buying it because every time I found a can, I bought every can I could find. But this is the next best thing. This is good stuff. You can buy it on Amazon. You can also find it on eBay. The more you buy, the cheaper it is per can. When we get done, we're going to be sealing the entire thing in gloss clear, but we're going to put it on in a special way to help knock down the gloss. Now, I normally would use semi-gloss, but I use gloss and I use semi-gloss, but the semi-gloss works a little bit better, but we don't have any in the shop, but it doesn't really matter because there's a way to put this on to also get the effect that you want without it being semi-gloss. And on top of everything else, this also dries fast, and it's a good clear. It's the Rust-Oleum's ×2 clear. These are also good. I use these, and you'll find, and I've found, I've used everything out there as far as paint goes. Rust-Oleum, I've used Krylon, I've used tons of stuff. There's some Krylon stuff I will not touch. There's some Rust-Oleum stuff I will not touch. I like stuff to dry fast, and I want it to be durable, and I also want to work well with other paints. And everything that I use in my shop is kind of like a standardized. I've gone through it, I know it works good, and I know what it's going to do, and I know how long it's going to take for me to be able to handle it. So everything's about speed, getting everything done, and all these paints are the best that I could find. Interesting enough, there's one thing that I'm not going to use, but I brought it out here anyway, is this Min-Wax wood finish. It is golden oak. And the reason why I have this out here is since we're doing a realistic paint job, metal actually does get stained by oil. And since firearms are cleaned very regularly and oiled very regularly, well, they should be. So over time, a firearm that has its finish removed, it will start to stain just from the oil, will stain the metal more of an amberish color. There'll still be some that metal gray underneath, but you'll see like an amber hue to it. And if you don't have what I have here in the shop, this is a great alternative spray wood finish. It will leave a little bit of an oiliness to it, but you let it dry for a day or two, and then you go back over it with your clear coat. It's done. And it'll trap it and hold everything down. And the clear coat is really to hold the whole paint job together and finish it and protect it. When we get to the staining of the metal, if you don't have access to what I'm going to be using, and what I'm going to be using is this right here. It is BC600. This is part of an automotive paint system. This is actually a tint. It's kind of a amber. It's very transparent. We'll be applying it with an airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, no big deal. Don't worry about it. And if you don't have access access to tinted paints like I do, don't worry about that either, because for the longest time, this was the exact same thing I used to create this effect of stained metal, the metal having this stained look to it. All I just used was Min-Max wood finish, aerosol wood finish. It works really well. All right, let's see here. All right, see, that's about dry already. That is dry. See how quick that was? Had a little talk, and then these are good. So I'm going to mount the scope mount to the blaster. So how I do that, even though this is a paint video, not a build video, I'll glue these in place, but there's also going to be a screw holding this on. But I do this, the gluing helps me hold it in place, and on top of that, it also, I believe, makes the bond even stronger. I'm also constantly going to be referring back to the original photos to make sure I have the proper placement, but I've done so many of these, I'm pretty good at placing it right off the bat. All right, now I got the scope and the scope mount mounted. It's all screwed and glued together, so it's not going anywhere. Now, to mask these pieces to show the damage we want to show, we're going to be using liquid latex. Now, this is basically what they call monster latex. It's a costuming latex or a makeup latex. It's used as a glue to glue latex prosthetics on. It's also, you can make some really cool zombies with just this stuff and toilet paper. This is what we're going to use to mask off all the chips and the weathering that we want to show on the scope and the scope mount. I think I'm actually going to, I don't have a computer right here, so I'm actually going to go over to my computer and do the weathering, and we'll just talk through the weathering as I do it and look at the pictures. All right, I'm going to start with the scope, and I'm looking at the picture right now. I'll probably have the picture on screen for you guys to see it, but in this area back here, you see some chipping right in line with that serial number right there, and as it goes across, it's chipping up into there. So that is where I'm going to start. I have a little bit of latex I have in a little Dixie cup. I'll mix it up because it's been sitting for a while. Here we go. We're going to start right here, adding some chips. Now I'm going to try my best, I've got 2 hooks on it, to simulate that chip that as best as I can, and then chip along the edge here. Another spot is down on the foot. It looks like it's chipped along the edge, like so, and it's chipped along this top edge right here, and it's most chipped right along here. So that's how we'll do that. I'm also going to add some more chipping over here where we can't see, but it's definitely got it. It's got some chipping right along this edge here. There we go. It looks like there's some scratching around this area from this being, the nut being tightened down. So I'm going to try to do that. Put some scratches around the edge. Then it looks like pretty much all of this edge is scratched. So we'll scratch that up. Looks like this entire corner is pretty much scratched off. And every time I do this, I always go back to the reference, because I always forget or miss something. So it's always good to just have a picture in front of you. I think that's good. Now, we're gonna have to let this sit and dry for about 15 minutes, and then we'll get back to the next step. The next step is basically we're gonna hang this thing up and spray the entire thing black. I'm gonna get my respirator on, and we have the exhaust fans on. Let's get to painting. All right, The black is now dry. Like I said, this is all done in layers, and there is another layer we have to add before we can start dry brushing. These old Mausers, there were case hardened, which is a type of metal treating to make the part hard and durable. And now the rest of the frame is mild steel. The lower frame is mild steel. A lot of the upper components, especially the barrel and all that, they're hardened parts. And then there's individually hardened parts up here also. So the bolt, the hammer, the trigger, the sight adjuster, and the rear sights, they're hardened parts. And how we're going to do that is they actually look different than regular parts. They're black, but they're actually blued. They have a blue look to them. Now, the chemical treatment to protect a firearm is called bluing. It's chemical bluing. And there's different types. There's chemical bluing, there's hot bluing, cold bluing, there's all kinds of different stuff. But the hardened parts look different. And how we're going to do that is with a Sharpie. So I'm going to take this Sharpie and I am going to basically just color in the rear sight here, the sight adjustment, the elevation adjustment on the sight. We're just going to color that in. And we're also going to do the lug on the side, and we're also going to do the trigger, or at least most of the trigger. You actually don't have to do the whole trigger on this, just the top half. And the reason why is we're going to work the weathering up the trigger, and when we get to the top of the trigger, all you're going to see is it going from metal to black and then to this bluing. And it looks really good. Creates a nice effect, a subtle effect that you wouldn't notice unless you had it in your hand. And all I'm using to do this is a Sharpie. Looking good. Okay, let's put the Sharpie away. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to dry brush the blaster body. We're going to dry brush everything except for the grips and the scope. And maybe a little bit. We don't even really need to do it on the scope mount. The reason why is the scope mount was built separate from the blaster, and it's aluminum, so it got a paint job with no prep. So it naturally weathers right away, but it doesn't look the same as the steel parts because it's aluminum. So it's always going to be a little bit brighter and shinier than all the rest of the blaster. When you do weather like this, it almost feels like it's out of place until you actually pull up a picture and look at it. It's like, oh, that's actually how it's supposed to look. So we're not going to do any dry brushing on the scope. We are going to dry brush the bolt heads, but besides that, it's all going to be the body of the blaster. What I use for my silver dry brushing, like I said before when we first started, is I like to keep everything simple. What I'm using is in the same family as this guy right here. I've already talked about it before. This is what I painted a flash suppressor with, but this is Rust-Oleum metallic finish, and this is basically the chrome finish. This will be the stuff that has a shiny chrome lid. This stuff is great, and it works really good for dry brushing. And what you want for dry brushing is a thinner paint. These are thinner. These metallic paints are thinner. These Rust-Oleum ones, they work really good because they absorb into your brush, and then for dry brushing, you literally try to get all the paint out of your brush before you start brushing apart. What I do is I just keep these little caps around and I just spray right into them. So I'm going to spray a little bit down in there. And then I use disposable acid brushes. But what I like to do is, this is a standard brush, and this is one I use for dry brushing. And I cut them down. I just like the way they act. They seem to do a better job. And you have more control because the bristles are shorter. I'm going to go ahead and load up my brush. And I'm going to try to get as much off back into the cup as I possibly can. Now, like I said, this one is Luke's blaster. Bespin blaster is a fairly worn out old Mauser. So when we dry brush this one, I'm going to be doing aggressive. I'm going to be doing a lot. But starting out, since even though I've dried my brush off, it's still a lot heavier than I like. So what I'm going to do until it gets down to where I really want it, I'm going to start by hitting the edges and the high spots. Because I don't want this to look like scratches. I want this to look like it's worn off. These are the areas that would have got most contact anyway. So taking it off fast or adding silver in those areas fast, it's no big deal. So that's what I'm going to do until I feel like the brush has gotten to where I want it. and I can start hitting the body. And sometimes a good place to test whether you're ready is the bottom. Now, I'm actually getting up underneath the scope. The best way to have done this is before you put the scope on, but if you just take the time and the effort to go up underneath the scope so you don't see, because this scope wasn't here when the gun itself was weathered over time. So if the scope had always been here, this area would be nice and clean. But I'm doing the trigger. It's giving this piece a little bit of life that it didn't have before. Let's weather this. This is one of those parts where I put the Sharpie on there. So let's start doing this. It's all nice and weathered. All right, on to the next step. Now we're going to be doing the same thing, but now we're going to be weathering or dry brushing the scope. The scope already has chip away on it, but we're going to do a little bit of dry brush on the scope. Get those areas where the paint wasn't chipped and rubbed off. It was actually, it wasn't chipped off, where it was actually worn through and worn off. So that's what we're going to do now. Once again, we're using the metallic finish Rust-Oleum Gold this time. Start by loading your brush, just like with the silver. Just trying to get as much off of it as possible. I'm going to touch right here, touch that edge. So over time, you just lightly run over top of them, and the texture, the sand casting, the paint will wear off, and the whole thing actually develops a little bit of like a brass look all over. Just lightly move your paintbrush over top of it, and you'll start bringing up that sand casting. Now, they machined or they sanded the seam right here, so you lay the brush across the seam and just lightly go down it, and it'll pick up the seam and show off that line in the middle. See that? There you go. See how that looks? All right. Now, next up is the lettering. And I just actually dab a little bit on my finger. I'm just going to dab it right into the letters, like so. And I'll take a rag and run over it again. Now at this point, I'm going to be pulling masking off, which is totally okay. Okay, get the rest of the white off. I'm going to take a little bit of water on my rag, because this acrylic is water soluble, so just wipe it off. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Now we got the scope pretty much squared away. It's time to add a little more patina to the blaster, where we've done our dry brushing and exposed the metal underneath. To do that, the metal kind of stains in a weird way. You have rust and it stains. At one time it's orange or brown or whatever, but once it's been cleaned, it usually ends up as a black stain on the steel. We're gonna replicate that a little bit. So what we're using is just some cheap acrylic black. I picked these up at Walmart for like, they used to be 50 cents, now they're 59 cents, but, and a little shot of water. And I don't want it to be super thick. I want it to be fairly thin. Then I'm just going to paint an area, just like so. Like this area right here. Then I'm going to come back with my brush or my towel. I use towels because if you use something like a paper towel, what will happen is the paper towel can leave, if it has a pattern stamped in it, like flowers or something, it can actually leave that in the paint, leave that impression. So these are my weathering towels. I have a whole bunch of them. It's clean, it's been through the laundry, but it's forever stained. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna paint a small section at a time. Now, this isn't really to be adding grime. This is more to be adding a weathered texture to the paint job itself, or the finish of the actual Mauser. They'll pick up these little black spots from basically oxidation, and by putting them in here, they just add another layer to the aging and the life of this old Mauser. And it also, you had that silver punching through. Now it's drawing the silver back down and adding a little bit of staining to it. You don't have to do this everywhere, but if it's really heavy dry brushing, I'll do it in those areas. Now, areas that get a lot of wear, like where your hand goes or the trigger, we're not doing that to the trigger area. We're only doing it to the larger flat surfaces. And right now, it doesn't even look like it's doing that much, but it's subtly making differences. All right, that was pretty quick and easy. Now, let's go to the next color we're gonna use is burnt umber. And this is gonna be the more brown staining that's left behind by rust and whatnot. And it's the same process, a little bit of paint, a little bit of water, and I'm not gonna clean this paintbrush at all. I'm just gonna use the black, just same brush I use for black, and it's gonna be the same process, just, I'm not gonna be putting as much on though as I did of the black. I took a lot of the black back off, but this one I can see really a lot more where it's going and what it's doing. So I have the ability to put it on, and like I said, I don't want this to look like dirt. I want this to look like stain in the metal. There's a different way of making this look like dirt, but that's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for more of a stain. All right, that done. Those were all very subtle. I didn't want to put a lot of color. I'm just adding subtle color. I'm not adding a lot of layers. Now, if you're doing like trying to make this dirty for mud or grease or whatever, you would put it on and then you would wipe it off and try to get it off, definitely off all the high spots and let it settle in the low spots. That was not what I was doing. I was actually wanting it to stay on the high spots and trying not to get it into the low spots, because I wasn't creating a dirt wash. I was creating more of a patina, more of a weathered, stained wash. Now, this is the time I would use this right here, the wood finish golden oak. But since I have something else that this leaves a little bit, this has oil in it, so it leaves a little bit of an oily finish that you have to let dry for a couple days, and then you would apply clear coat over top of it, and then it's perfectly fine. I don't usually use that anymore because I have an airbrush. So I am now going to airbrush the metal, and what this airbrushing is going to simulate is oil and the staining that oil does to the metal. You want to get in on this one?
Make no noise. Make no noise.
All right, I'm happy with that. All right, this thing's coming right along. Now, what I just did, well, I just removed all the masking around the scope mount and on the scope to give us that beautiful chip paint job. Now the black wash and the brown wash I did on here, and then the airbrush over top has really dulled this down, and it looks good, but you're not seeing all the detail, and that's what the clear coat's going to do. Most old firearms have a layer of oil almost always on them. That's just the way they are. They're leather. The leather holsters, if they're ever in them, are saturated with oil. You have to keep old things like this oiled to protect them and to keep them working properly. So for this to be a little bit glossy, that's really not out of the norm of what it would look like anyway in real life, because they're just oily. There's oil on them all the time. So that's why I'm using a gloss clear. I'm also going to put it on in a way that it's not super glossy. I'm going to get my respirator, get this hung up, and start spraying the clear coat on, and that's going to encapsulate everything else. But I'm not going to be painting the grips just yet. The reason why I'm going to paint the grips separately is I want them to have a different finish than what the rest of the blaster has. And the reason why is they're wood. They can be shiny, but most of the time they've been handled, so they have a dull shine to them, not a glossy shine. And this is going to have a little bit of gloss because of the oil. So let me get this hung up, get my respirator on, and put the clear coat on. That's good enough to lock it all in. That's done. Put it in front of the fan. Now the clear coat is dry, and now we have everything sealed and trapped in. All that's left is finishing off the flash suppressor, which is right here. But before we do the flash suppressor, we're going to use this. This is another tint, but if you want to use a color, this is just a tint for mixing paint, and I like using these because I can just go in and narrow down what I want and the effect I want. But you look for a brown, a reddish brown, and then you over reduce it. I'd say 50%. And what you end up with, this is also good to be considered maybe like a maroon, but it's a beautiful color. And you lay it over top of black, and since it's thinned, it's going to show brush marks, and with the black underneath, it kind of simulates wood grain really well, and that's the effect I want. Look at how this looks really red, but don't worry, it's going to be a lot darker on the blaster itself. And when this is dry, this is going to darken up a lot. And it's going to look very old and very antique-y, and that's exactly the look I want. But it'll also show, like I said, it'll show those brush strokes, and it'll look a lot like wood grain. Give this a few more strokes here. And then we'll set this out to dry, and it'll look amazing when it's done. While we're waiting for those grips to dry, I have the flash suppressor here. It's pretty much dry. It's dry to the touch. It's ready to go. The finish looks great on it. I love the way it turned out. And the only thing we're going to do to this is once the blaster is done, we're going to glue this on, and then we're going to take this black, and then we're going to go over top of that black, very similar to the way we did the body of the blaster to create the staining. We're going to go over this, and then we're going to tap it down with the towel, but then we're going to let it dry. And once it dries, we're going to go back over it, and then we're going to try to scrub all that dirt off, or all that black off. And what gets left behind will be the weathering for the flash suppressor. Give it a few more minutes. I'm looking at it right now. The grips are almost dry. A couple more minutes and they'll be ready to go. All right, now the grips are nice and dry, and look at them. They look great. They're exactly what I wanted. Every time I put that color on this 800, I don't even know, there it is right here. Every time I put this stuff on, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's too red. But as soon as it dies down and dries, it dries this darker reddish brown, and it's just the perfect color. I love it. It's exactly what I want every time. And with the brush strokes in there, it looks like wood grain. It looks old. I'm always wanting that antique look, like an old cherry antique look, and this pulls it off. It looks great. Now, the flash suppressor, it's right here. So I am going to put a little glue in the flash suppressor and then glue it on and then start mixing up some black paint to weather the flash. And once that's done, this blaster is complete. All right, there we go. Nice and even, straight. That's beautiful. Looks great, doesn't it? It even looks good just now, but we got to put a little weathering on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that same black we used before to help stain the metal, and we're going to throw a little bit on here, but we're not going to use as much water to dilute it this time. We're using less water this time. So here we go. We're going to start painting. First thing I want to do is I want to get all this knurling blacked out. I want all this knurling full of paint. Now I'm going to paint the rest of it. Now, one thing I should have mentioned earlier is when you're weathering, if there's a mold line or an imperfection that you personally don't like, go ahead and hide it with weathering. Most of these kits, like my kits, are garage kits or homemade kits, however you want to say it. The old school term is garage kits. They're made in somebody's garage. This is a classic garage kit. They don't always come out perfect, and here's the funny thing is, a garage kit is no different than the original special effects kit. And the reason why is they're using the exact same techniques to recreate things, whether they're recreating things that never existed and they had a sculpt or a prototype or whatever, or they're recreating real life things, but you can't afford to keep buying all the real life things that they are needing. So you make molds and you reproduce those parts. So now what I'm doing is I'm using my towel and I'm slowly dabbing away all that paint I put on it until I get to a certain point and I want to start to letting it dry. But I don't want any like swoosh marks or rub marks. I just want it to be dabbed marks, like texture from the rag. There we go. All right. Now, I'm going to let this dry for a minute or two. Now I'm just going to lightly go over it. Nothing heavy. I'm just trying to rub it off, but lightly rub it off. And the texture I want is scrapes and whatnot. I don't want it to be perfectly clean. I also don't want it to look like it all happened at one time, like I was like cleaning it. I want it to look hashed and round, and then the areas like in the back here, I want to just, yes. All right, look at that. Now it's really dry, so there. I like that. This turned out wonderful. I am truly, every time I do one of these screen accurate hero paint jobs, I don't get to do them as often as I want. And I understand why people don't want to pay the extra money to have it done, because it is an extra expense. I totally understand. But this one turned out wonderfully. Every time I do one of these, it always feels like I'm messing it up until the end and everything comes together. It doesn't look right, it doesn't feel, even though I know I'm doing it right, every stage doesn't look right. It doesn't look right until you put the clear coat on. It doesn't look right until you do this or you do that. And this blaster turned out beautiful. This, I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate and 100% perfect. My hand can't reproduce what nature did over time to these pieces, but my eye and my hand, we try to reproduce it, and we get darn close. You can look at this little chip right here and it's like, oh, there it is right there. This is a beautiful blaster. This is a great looking blaster. I'm super pleased with the way it turned out, and I have no issues about sending this off to the customer, and I know he's going to love it as much as I did. I'm thinking, and my editor was also thinking, that he would like me to do more of these paint jobs. We've never done how to recreate a hero paint job, and although doing a couple more hero paint jobs, they're all repetitive. The only thing that's not repetitive is the details that you're trying to recreate per the blaster, but the technique is pretty much similar all the way across the board. But if there's interest in it and we can create a paint guide for like all the DL-44s, we'd be more than happy to do that, and that gives us something else to do because we're always looking for ideas. So if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, make a comment and say, hey, yeah, I would love to see you do the Hoth DL-44 or the Greedo Killer DL-44. We'd be more than happy to go ahead and start filming these paint jobs because we're doing them all the time anyway. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed following along and seeing this blaster really take shape and become a beautiful display item. Join us next time when hopefully we're doing something else fun and interesting down here in the shop.